Thank you very much, and thank you for coming today. The purpose of today's press conference is to formally announce that Christchurch City Council has regained its accreditation as a building consent authority. It is an absolute delight to be able to make this announcement today. It is the best Christmas present that a mayor could ever ask for. The amount of work that has gone into making this happen has been utterly extraordinary from start to finish. But to start with, I want to thank the government for making the appointment of a Crown manager who has provided the direction and the leadership that our building control group required. And in that sense, I want to pay tribute to Doug Martin and his team, who have actually made an enormous difference to our city, and I want to honour him on this occasion for so doing. I also want to, just as an aside, say that I used his first report as a bit of a touchstone when I became the Mayor of Christchurch. It was 6 pages long, and that became the benchmark for all council reports, which was, if you can't say it in 6 pages, then there's something wrong with the reporting methodology. The wonderful thing that came out of that first report was the idea of a customer advisory group. And what that did was set the scene for the Christchurch City Council's Building Consent Authority, as I can now say, to be an outward-looking organisational part of our council. Outward-looking is really important when you're dealing with building consents. Building consents are what give people confidence in terms of the rebuild, and that's why it's so important that we get that feedback loop in place. So he has contributed an awful lot. I also want to acknowledge Peter Sparrow, who's sitting to my left. He took up the leadership role in the building control group partway through this process. I think he was an advisor with the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment to start with, so he came in with a background of knowledge and experience that really made a huge difference. And I'd like to acknowledge him and the entire team for what they have managed to achieve. I should mention MB as well. We've got Derek Baxter and Mike Reedy from MB. I think Derek Baxter's been seconded by the Minister into his office to provide support for special projects, but he certainly was one of those individuals who made an enormous difference as well. So the government, MB, the Crown manager and our own building control group have all contributed to this day. From the council's point of view as well, we've set up a governance process that I think people can be really secure in knowing that we're not going to end up in a situation where this council was over 18 months ago, where they were about to lose their accreditation as a building consent authority, and nobody in the governance of the organisation knew that that threat was about to emerge. And that will never happen again. We have David East, who's chairing our Regulations and Consents Committee. It receives monthly reports with detailed analysis of the changes that have been made. And I just want to share with you some numbers, which I have written down. From January to the end of November, we granted 9,431 building consents at a total value of $2.7 billion. That compares the same time last year to 7,266 at a value of $1.5 billion. And you can see that even that is extraordinary in terms of achievement last year. The achievement this year is utterly, it's almost unimaginable that they've been able to achieve that. So I'm very proud of the work that has been completed to this point. I have every confidence that not only will we be able to maintain standards that will enable us to hold on to our accreditation, but that we will become the exemplar Building Consent Authority for New Zealand. And on that note, can I hand over to the Minister for Building and Construction.
Thank you very much, Mayor Leanne. I acknowledge your Chief Executive, particularly Peter from the team, and Doug who has been pivotal to the change process over the last 18 months. It's probably true as a politician you hand lots of certificates over. None in my history have been as significant as this certificate in rebuilding confidence in the institution of the Christchurch City Council and in this massive rebuild taking place in the city. There are huge tensions that go with the size of the rebuild that Christchurch is going through. And we need to get it done at pace, but equally it needs to be a job done with quality. This city will forever remember the tragedy of CTV, where that building was not built to standard and the loss of so many lives. And so the significance of this certificate is saying we have confidence both in the pace and the quality of the building consistent system in this city at a time that's just so crucial, not just for Christchurch but for Canterbury and for New Zealand. As Mayor Leanne said, to have been able to reform the council's building consent system at the same time there has been this tsunami of building consent applications that are so crucial to the housing of your citizens, where we've seen Christchurch typically doing about 1,000 consents per year, doing currently about 4,000, looking at least that number again in terms of the commercial sector, and now looking close to $3 billion per year of building consent work in a year. How has it been done? It's been done with strengthened leadership. It's been done with improved information systems. I think we should acknowledge the support that the team has had from migrants from Ireland, from Canada, and a few other corners of the world, as well as the innovation that the council has put in place in contracting out to other councils around New Zealand where there's been surplus capacity in their building consent services to be able to do some of the important mechanical work of processing consents. I'd also note that this is a first in another sense. The previous Local Government Act only allowed ministers or government to intervene in a council with a massive approach of effectively doing an ECAN of replacing an entire council. We changed the law in 2011 and allowed a more strategic intervention around a particular area of a local authority's services that we're finding. There was a fair amount of nervousness with local government in New Zealand around the additional powers. In my view, the experience of the relationship between the Christchurch City Council and the government in the restructuring and the process around the building consenting at this council improves the confidence between central and local government that these tools can be used in such a way that respects both institutions but gets us to the end point that we've successfully achieved with the issue of the IAN's re-accreditation. In a technical sense, the Crown Manager's role ceases on the 31st of December, and on the 1st of January, the Christchurch City Chief Executive, Mayor and Council return to being fully in control of their building consenting services. And I think the Mayor is correct in that Christchurch has moved from being the very first consenting authority to lose its accreditation to one that has not just regained it, but is actually now setting the benchmark as to best practice around building consenting services in this very challenging time for Christchurch. So on that note, I'd ask Leanne and Peter to receive this blessing of this building. Congratulations. And on that note, we'll ask Peter to say a few words as well as we've done some of the hard yards.
I'd just like to say a quick few words, and that's we couldn't have done it without the group and the staff downstairs on level 3. I'm really proud of the team that's had to stand up and take a lot of problems around the industry and turn them around and fix them. But one of the things that I have said to my team, this is the first hurdle. We've got a lot more hurdles to cover, and we will continually improve, because our goal is to become the exemplar building consent authority in the country.
That's great, guys. So we'll just open up to any questions. People coming in and still coming up here.
I've got a question for Dr. Martin. We're not able to get closer.
Might have to swap around.
Yeah.
Sorry, they didn't.
That's all right.
Just so we can
He needs the microphone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Why don't you take my seat as well?
I was hoping this wouldn't happen.
That's why he wanted to sit in the background.
But just wanted to know, what was it that that allowed this to happen? What did you, what changes did you make for this difference in place?
I think the biggest change has been to put a talented leadership team in the control group. And in many respects, while the loss of accreditation was quite spectacular, the actual root cause was quite conventional, which was really a failure of management leadership within the organisation. So, and that gave me a lot of confidence, and putting a really talented, you're going to be well served by a very talented building control team now. And my one sleepless night was that we wouldn't get the people coming forward for the job, but they did. We even had a few in our back pocket as well. So that's been the key thing. And I've stepped back and taken very much a backseat role for the last 6 months, and you can see the result.
I've got a question maybe for the mayor. How much does this process cost the council?
Millions. Okay, well, I think that you can't actually just talk about cost in terms of the financial cost, because that has been millions. We've had to put an additional $10 million, I think, on our budget in order to cover additional costs. But even beyond the financial cost, it's the loss of confidence. It's the loss of capacity to actually process consents in a timely and effective way that holds up the rebuild. So I think that I'd actually like to recast the question as how much were you prepared to invest to restore confidence in the city's rebuild? And that's it has been significant, but it's been an investment and it's been worth it.
You're saying some of the, you were Minister, some of the work has been contracted out to other councils which had surplus capacity.
Yes.
Is that continuing out, or is it all in-house?
Yeah.
Or who is?
The first thing I would say is that it's actually changed the way in which local government's functioned, in that other councils, for instance, such as Auckland, have learned from the experience of Christchurch, and it is just common sense for our councils around the country to take a common sense approach that if one building consent authority is under pressure for it to use the expertise that may be surplus and being underutilised in other councils.
So that's continuing.
That will be continuing. That's right.
And so what does this mean for the rebuild now?
I think that people can have real confidence that the Christchurch City Council has, as Peter said, stepped over an important hurdle that has stood in the way. It is extraordinary that at the time of such pressure on our building consent authority status that we lost it. So it's so important that we've got that back on track. So it means an awful lot to the city, but this wasn't a case of reaccreditation. I think people need to understand that we have gone through a building consent authority accreditation process from scratch, banking nothing from what was there before. And that, I think, is the scale of the achievement, is that we have become an accredited building consent authority as if we were never one before. And I think that is a credit, not just to Peter, but to the entire team.
The advice I've had from officials is that there were deficiencies and problems in the building consent service of the City Council prior to the earthquakes, but with that huge tsunami of additional consents, it then really fell apart. And that is what's been extraordinary around the rebuild that Doug Martin and the people have been able to redo.
And the confidence that I can offer is, I always said that the loss of accreditation was a failure of management and governance. The accreditation says the management is in place, and we've put the governance structure in place to make sure that we never allow this to happen again.
In terms of staffing numbers, how has this affected staff numbers? Like, will people leave now?
No, people will not be leaving. We have to maintain our resourcing. So since the ground manager came in, we've only really employed an extra 27 staff. We've got a low turnover in staff as well, which is fantastic. But what we need to be is we need to be innovative, and we need to do continuous improvement.
So they'll stay on 27.
Sorry?
Those 27 you employed to stay?
Yeah, well, some of those 27 will be, for example, Canadians that came to our aid in the international recruitment process, and they're on fixed term contracts. So when we see the rebuild start maybe turning down, we can start saying, okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
When do you expect consent to kind of peak? I guess you have to separate out residential and commercial over the time frame.
So, I mean, if our prediction is that commercial could continually steadily increasing, I mean, we've got a CBD to rebuild as well, with the residential peak probably the first quarter of next year. Okay, that's a prediction, that's forecasting. We'll be reforecasting in the next month, and we'll be able to confirm.
Is there any further questions for anyone?
Does this change the cost of consenting in the future?
This has changed the cost of consenting. What we found in the previous building control group was they weren't recouping their costs. So we've been very, very clear. We've had to go into a consultation process and increase costs. That was done at the start of this year.
The feedback that I've had from industry has been that the consenting cost is a very small part of the overall building project, and that if there are significant delays or deficiencies in the services that's provided by the council, that can have a tenfold increase on the cost of the overall rebuild. And so the cost of the consent is very small in terms of the $15–20 billion rebuild taking place in the city. Those extra 27 staff and your team are at the fulcrum of the rebuild. And so the amount that it's cost either the council or the consent applicants is very small proportionate to the importance for the economic and earthquake recovery of the city. Thank you very much.